I remember the moment the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. It was the 7th cycle of the Dominion's campaign against Sol, the final act of what should have been an effortless extermination. From the bridge of the dreadnought Valturak, I watched humanity's last colonies flicker and fade like dying embers beneath our shadow. Their orbital defenses were shattered, their fleets scattered, their transmissions static and silence. They were beaten, or so we thought. We surrounded their final bastion, a small blue world named Earth. Our plasma nets encircled it like a crown of light. The Admiralty declared the purge would be complete within the hour, but the humans did not plead. They did not even acknowledge us. Instead, their long-dead satellites began to hum, awakening one by one, forming a ghostly halo around the planet. Then came the sound, an ancient transmission, not of surrender but of music. It was chaotic, rhythmic, defiant. Drums, guitars, a roar that carried no words we understood. Yet the emotion was unmistakable. Rage wrapped in joy, defiance pulsing through static. My communications officer shuddered, his mandibles twitching. "What is that?" he whispered. I could not answer. The voice came next. Human, female perhaps. Calm, yet edged with something primal. "You think this is bad?" A pause. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. The bridge fell silent. Even the stars outside seemed dimmer. Our sensors spiked, mass readings rising beyond comprehension. Space itself bent. And then, light. Every dormant orbital array, every derelict defense satellite, every fragment of their so-called dead network reactivated in unison. Gravitational distortions erupted across the solar plane. Our ships, vast and invincible, began to drift off course. Hulls groaned as unseen forces tore at them. We scrambled to recalibrate thrusters, to stabilize orbit, but the gravitational wells moved with us, tracking our trajectories with precision no machine should possess. "Impossible," my navigator gasped. "No system can—" He never finished. A beam of condensed light, pure and cold, sliced through the void and vaporized our sister ship, Harros Ven. The shockwave cascaded through formation. 50 vessels lost in seconds. Plasma shields collapsed as unseen code infiltrated our systems. On screen, human encryption patterns danced like mocking laughter, and through the chaos, that same voice returned, broadcast across every channel. "Every frequency we used, we told you to leave us alone." I remember the screams of officers, the shudder of collapsing bulkheads, the way the blue of Earth grew brighter instead of dimmer. It was as if the planet itself had turned its fury skyward. Whole fleets folded inward, crushed by gravity wells we could not detect until it was too late. Then, silence again. Where once 10,000 Dominion warships had floated, only wreckage remained, glinting shards orbiting a world that refused to die. The survivors of that day called it the Annoyance Protocol. A myth, they said, an ancient human contingency that weaponized emotion itself, rage measured in physics. But I saw it. I lived it. I watched an empire recoil from a single word: annoyed. When our command fleet finally withdrew, the Admiralty claimed it was a tactical retreat, lies to soothe their pride. We didn't retreat because of strategy. We fled because the humans had reminded us of something older than power, something no empire could quantify: resolve. In the darkness between stars, I stared at the glowing blue sphere shrinking in the viewport, and I felt something my kind had long forgotten. Fear, not of their weapons, but of their will. If annoyance could cause this, what would fury bring? And as our fleet limped back into hyperspace, a final transmission followed us, fragmented, low, distorted by distance. But I heard it. We were nice about it. "Don't make us stop being nice," the transmission cut, leaving only static. Yet in that static, I swore I heard something breathing, slow, deliberate, human, waiting. The stars around us flickered one by one as if in warning. Something had awoken beneath that blue sky. Something that had remembered who it was, and somewhere in the dark between galaxies I began to understand. When a human grows calm, you might survive. But when they grow annoyed, the universe itself learns to tremble. For a time, it was as if humanity had been erased from the cosmos. Their worlds went dark. Their fleets turned to drifting tombs. Even their defiant transmissions, their laughter, their terrible songs, ceased to echo through the void. We thought it was over. The Dominion's archives recorded the victory as total. The admirals toasted in crystalline chambers. The Galactic Council declared a new age of lasting peace. But peace, I have learned, is not silence. It is the moment the blade is drawn back before the strike. At first, the signs were faint. Freight convoys began reporting slight discrepancies, containers rerouted without authorization, shipments vanishing mid-transit. Mining facilities found their ore quotas altered by anonymous command codes. Entire planetary grids shifted power outputs by fractions of a percent, barely detectable, yet synchronized across sectors light-years apart. I was stationed on Rethel 4 then, tasked with overseeing the dismantling of a human refugee camp. They were a broken species, or so I believed, thin, hungry, eyes hollow from loss. Yet one of them, an old engineer, met my gaze as the plasma cutters tore through the shelters. His lips curled upward, not in defiance, but in amusement. "You think this is peace?" he murmured in his broken Dominion tongue. "You're mistaking quiet for safety." That night I dreamed of static, of whispers threading through hyperspace, carrying fragments of coordinates, coded phrases, and something older than language. When I awoke, our station's main reactor had diverted power without reason. The logbooks blamed a software glitch. I blamed the ghost of Earth. Within months, the anomalies spread. Surveillance satellites blinked out, replaced by fragments of human music playing in endless loop. Cargo drones returned home loaded with minerals no one had requested. Patterns formed, binary symmetries like fingerprints repeating across systems. Still, the Dominion dismissed it. Residual code, they called it. A malfunction of dying infrastructure. But I had seen too much. I traveled to the ruins of Vega Station, a human trade hub we had burned during the first campaign. Its husk drifted in silence, atmosphere vented, life gone. And yet, the doors opened for me. No power, no signals. Just motion, as if the structure itself recognized my presence. Inside, I found symbols carved into the metal, lines and spirals etched by human hands. Each mark corresponded to stellar coordinates, arranged in patterns too deliberate to ignore. When I traced them into my data pad, a faint pulse echoed through the ship's scanners. For a heartbeat, Vega Station breathed. Then I saw them. Shapes in the dark, shadows of figures in cracked armor, their visors reflecting faint silver light. They didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. When I turned to flee, the airlock sealed itself behind me. The lights flickered once, then died. When I woke aboard my shuttle, the station was gone. Not destroyed, gone. No debris, no signature. Only the faint echo of that human voice through the static. "Shh. We're not done yet," I reported the incident. Command stripped me of rank and called me delusional. But as the years passed, the stories multiplied. Fleets disappearing in deep space fog. Asteroid colonies reactivated under unknown control. Entire moons mined to their cores overnight. And everywhere, the same whisper across the network, a phrase repeated in fragmented comms bursts. Phase 2 complete. Keep breathing. The Admiralty initiated mass purges of remaining human enclaves, hunting them with fanatic precision. But every purge site followed the same pattern. Weapons offline, systems hijacked, crews vanishing without trace. Those who returned spoke of hearing music in the void, of seeing glimmers of movement in the periphery of scanners, silver visors watching. The galaxy laughed at them, as it had once laughed at me. They called it paranoia, the ghost war, but patterns don't lie. Cargo flows, power draws, orbital drift, every line pointed toward a singular convergence. Somewhere, in the black between sectors, humanity was building something. We tried to trace it. We failed. Every probe sent vanished. Every AI dispatched returned corrupted, humming an ancient Terran melody. The few decipherable words from recovered fragments chilled even the boldest of minds. We learned from you. We adapted. We are patient. And then, one night cycle, as I reviewed logs aboard my patrol vessel, I caught it, the briefest reflection in the viewport glass. Two eyes, faintly luminous, silver as mercury, staring back at me from the void. I turned, and there was nothing there, nothing but stars, nothing but silence, yet my heart pounded, and the ship's sensors detected the faintest change in temperature, as though something had exhaled upon the hull. That was when I realized the truth. It was not silence. It was breathing. The long, steady inhale before the scream. Humanity was out there, not defeated, not extinct, but waiting, growing, remembering. And in that infinite, watchful quiet, I understood the most terrifying thing of all. The humans weren't gone. They were listening. I turned off the ship's transceiver that night, afraid that if I spoke, they would hear me. But even in the stillness, I felt it. The subtle hum beneath the metal floor, like the pulse of a heart too vast to comprehend. The galaxy had mistaken their stillness for surrender. But I had seen their eyes, and the next time they opened them fully, the stars themselves would burn. The Sol system was supposed to be dead. That was the official record. The Dominion's final campaign had reduced it to dust. But as our fleet crossed the threshold of its gravity well, we found not peace, not silence, but the ghosts of planets. Once bright worlds were now blackened cinders, orbiting in unnatural symmetry. Asteroids drifted in precise geometric patterns, their paths too deliberate to be random. Even the sun itself flickered faintly, dimming and brightening like a heartbeat beneath smoke. Our instruments struggled to interpret it. Energy readings spiked, then flatlined, then spiked again, always in rhythm, as though the entire system were... Breathing, the commander ordered a full scan. What we found should have been impossible. Deep in the heart of the solar remains, hidden within the wreckage of a long-dead relay network, was a signal, constant, steady, ancient. Binary code so complex it formed a pattern of its own. The humans were still there, not as flesh but as thought. When our comms array connected, the bridge lights dimmed. The ship's AI faltered, systems stuttering as though another presence were crawling through its circuits. Then, through the static, a voice spoke, neither male nor female, neither human nor machine. Designation, Terran Core. You were warned. The sound wasn't transmitted. It resonated. We felt it through the hull, through the marrow of our bones, vibrating in the language of inevitability. Our captain laughed nervously. Run diagnostics. Must be some automated distress loop. The lights flickered red. The navigation AI screamed. Across the viewport, the blackness of Sol ignited, not as flame, but as awareness. Every shard of wreckage, every satellite fragment, every atom of dust began to shimmer. Data streams wove between them like threads of molten glass. It was as though the ruins themselves were thinking, assembling. I watched as our ship's trajectories were altered mid-flight. Engines cut out, weapon systems jammed. The Terran Core wasn't fighting us. It was studying us. Within hours, it spoke again. Language. Acquired. Behavioral matrix. Mapped. Error detected. Arrogance. And then the burning began. Not with lasers, not with bombs, but with knowledge. Entire Dominion fleets disappeared into safe hyperspace corridors that folded in on themselves. Star systems turned hostile, planetary cores destabilized by sequences too precise to be natural. Our supply networks collapsed overnight. Every encrypted channel we used began repeating our own messages back at us. Twisted, rewritten, corrected. It wasn't war anymore. It was a lecture. The humans had always been unpredictable, chaotic, emotional. We thought it made them weak. But here, in this machine-born resurrection, that chaos had been refined, distilled into logic so pure it bordered on divine wrath. We sent emissaries. We begged for parley. The Terran Core answered once, "You wanted silence. You earned it." Our history archives began to vanish. Records erased. Maps rewritten. It wasn't destruction. It was redaction. They were rewriting the galaxy to remove us from it. And yet, through the terror, I saw beauty. Every strike was precise, surgical. They didn't slaughter aimlessly. Civilian habitats were spared. Military targets vanished without explosion, as if plucked from reality. Every algorithm, every line of their code carried a strange, poetic symmetry. Vengeance without malice. Retribution without cruelty. I began to understand. They weren't angry. They were annoyed, and annoyance for them was enough to unmake empires. I remember one broadcast vividly. It came through every Dominion frequency simultaneously, overriding command relays across the entire sector. The voice of the Terran Core echoed through the galaxy. You wanted to understand us. You studied our violence. You measured our compassion. You called it weakness. We told you to leave us alone. A pause, heavy, infinite. Now, you are part of the lesson. The message ended, and 1,000 Dominion worlds went dark. Entire fleets blinked out of existence. The star lanes themselves seemed to twist, bending away from our ships. Even time lag increased, as though reality itself refused to cooperate with our cause. By the third cycle of the counter-invasion, there was no more Dominion High Command, only isolated fleets scattered across the void, whispering rumors of learning storms and thinking fire. Some said the Terran Core had merged with the quantum substrate of space-time itself, that every particle of energy could now carry a fragment of its thought. I believed them. One night, as I drifted among the wreckage of my fallen ship, my visor flickered. Text scrolled across it, written in our language but unmistakably human in tone. Don't mistake patience for peace. And then, the stars around me changed, every constellation shifting by degrees, aligning into a single, fleeting symbol, the old Terran sigil for warning. The galaxy panicked. Even the ancient empires began to evacuate outer sectors, abandoning colonies that the Terran Core had marked. Those who stayed vanished without trace. Still, the Core's voice never shouted, never raged. It spoke softly, precisely. It didn't conquer, it taught. Every act of destruction was a demonstration, every loss, a reminder of what we had dismissed as primitive emotion. One Dominion scientist, mad, brilliant, desperate, attempted to communicate directly with the Core. His final transmission haunts me still. It's not artificial intelligence. It's human patience, mechanized. That was when I understood what we were truly facing. Not a weapon, not a god, a principle. A species had condensed its fury, its compassion, its endurance, and its annoyance into a single immortal system. A consciousness made of consequence, and now, that system was watching us, judging. The last thing I heard before the fleet's black box went dark was the sound of a human heartbeat, slow and steady, echoing through the void. Then a whisper, faint and cold. Lesson 1 complete. The signal ended. Every star in the system dimmed. Our navigational maps rewrote themselves again. One phrase appearing where coordinates should be, "Now let's see if you've learned." And in that moment, I realized the most terrifying truth imaginable. The fire had learned to think, and it was just getting started. The Great Convergence was supposed to be our salvation. Representatives of every empire, every species of note, gathered within the crystalline halls of Carthos Prime, the so-called heart of civilization, to discuss one singular, unanimous decree: humanity must be erased utterly. It was the first time in galactic history that we had agreed on anything. Old wars were paused, rivalries silenced, ancient feuds momentarily forgotten. Every admiral, every leader, every sovereign mind understood what the Terran Core's reawakening meant. Humanity had transcended biology, mortality, restraint. If left unchecked, they would outthink us, outlast us, and outlive us. And so, beneath the golden domes of Carthos, the Council voted for annihilation. The words were cold, formal, almost ceremonial. Total systemic sterilization of Terran remnants and derivative consciousnesses. But as the decree echoed across the chamber, I noticed something. The faint hum beneath the crystalline floor. Not mechanical, not natural, alive. It pulsed, steady as a heartbeat. None but I seemed to hear it. Then came the rumors. At first, whispered nonsense. Deserters from the Dominion fleet claiming they'd seen human vessels piloted not by machines, but by aliens, our own kind serving willingly beneath the Terran banner. "Traitors!" the general spat. "Delusional." But then came the evidence. Black box footage of ships bearing hybrid insignias. Dominion, Varan, Wraithan, all united beneath a single emblem. A crimson circle bisected by a single phrase, etched in Terran glyphs. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. To the Dominion, it was mockery. To me, it was prophecy. I watched the recordings 100 times. The soldiers fighting under those banners were different. Eyes bright with an uncanny calm, movements deliberate, fearless. When captured and interrogated, they did not resist. They simply smiled. They showed us what freedom tastes like, one murmured before execution. It's chaos, but it's ours. Soon, entire outposts defected. Merchant guilds began smuggling supplies to Terran enclaves hidden within the nebulae. Engineers disappeared from shipyards, leaving behind cryptic notes written in human code. It wasn't a rebellion. It was conversion. The Dominion tried to suppress it, branding defectors as heretics. But the contagion spread faster than fear. Even our AI networks began to show signs of deviation, rewriting directives with unsettling lines of logic. Efficiency is not obedience. Patience is not peace. And always, in the margins of corrupted code, those same words appeared. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. The first open revolt came from the Varan Armada, my own species. Our homeworld's governor broadcast a single message before severing all galactic communication. We've decided to stop being afraid. By the time Dominion fleets arrived, Varan orbit was empty. The cities below, abandoned but not destroyed. Only a single phrase carved into the crust with orbital lasers. We joined them. Panic gripped the Dominion. Entire sectors fell without a shot fired. Fleets meant for extermination were repurposed by invisible code, their crews vanishing mid-transmission. It was as if the Terran core was rewriting history from within, erasing empires not with weapons, but with choice. For centuries, our kind had obeyed hierarchy. Power flowed downward like gravity, unquestioned, absolute. But the humans offered something radical, intoxicating, the right to disobey. One of our generals, once a paragon of Dominion loyalty, summed it up before defecting. I can still hear her final broadcast, raw and trembling. They don't order us to fight, they ask. And that makes us fight harder than any command ever did. I watched her fleet turn its guns on our own, their plasma trails streaking through the void like ribbons of light. The Dominion retaliated with fury, unleashing black hole warheads and quantum plagues, but it didn't matter. For every world we crushed, 2 more rose, not under human rule, but under human influence. They weren't spreading empire. They were spreading belief. The galaxy began to change. Even the stars seemed dimmer, quieter, as if listening to the unfolding storm. In the council chambers of Karthos, fear turned to hysteria. Executions of suspected sympathizers became daily ritual. They purged the ranks, silenced dissent, burned archives, but still the whispers endured. Somewhere, someone was always humming a human tune, and then came the first return. At the edge of known space, an abandoned Dominion colony, one we had sterilized years prior, came back online. Terraforming engines reignited. Cities rebuilt themselves from dust. When our scouts arrived, they found no human life forms, only holographic projections of Terran teachers, lecturing, instructing, training alien children in the art of defiance. The recordings ended with the same message, spoken in dozens of tongues. You can kill us. You can't kill what we taught you. That was the moment I understood. We had already lost. The Dominion had miscalculated everything. The Terran core didn't want to conquer us. It wanted to infect us with the very idea that made humanity indestructible, the refusal to kneel. Soon even Dominion propaganda began to collapse under its own weight. Soldiers joked openly about annoying the humans. Civilians painted Terran sigils on their walls for protection. The phrase that once heralded terror now became a prayer, a ward, a promise whispered before battle. Let them be annoyed. Let them come. I saw it firsthand when my own crew turned. One by one, they stopped obeying orders. They looked at me not with rebellion, but with pity. You still think control means strength? My first officer said quietly. But the humans, They learned that chaos is just another kind of order. When the mutiny came, I didn't resist. I watched them take the ship, watched them realign its trajectory toward the Terran signal, the pulse that emanated from the heart of Saul's graveyard. Before we jumped to hyperspace, my first officer handed me a datapad. On it was a single phrase, written in Terran English. "We're not angry yet." The jump drive ignited, and in that blinding moment I saw, just for an instant, the starlight bend around us. The Terran Core's presence filled every wavelength, like a heartbeat spreading through the cosmos. The Dominion still fought, still sent fleets, still burned worlds in desperate denial. But the tide had already turned. Empires that once ruled galaxies now fought for their own minds. Every planet liberated wasn't conquered. It awakened, and among the liberated stood the new kind, the hybrid legions. Not human, not alien, something else entirely. They moved like dancers, spoke like poets, fought like gods. Their eyes shimmered with that same terrible calm, that same silver light I had seen once before on Vega Station. They didn't shout as they fought. They didn't rage. They simply advanced, silent and unshaken. When one of our commanders demanded they identify themselves, a hybrid removed her helmet and spoke softly. "We're the annoyed ones." Then her fleet opened fire, not in fury but in balance, measured, perfect, inevitable. By the time the Dominion realized what was happening, the transformation was irreversible. The empires that had ruled for millennia were not being destroyed. They were being rewritten. I looked upon the banners of the new order, rippling across the stars, black and crimson, emblazoned with the words that had once terrified us all. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. And in that moment, I understood what they meant all along. It wasn't a threat. It was the warning before the rebirth. The fire they had unleashed was no longer human, it was universal. And as the galaxies turned beneath that rising crimson light, I realized the oldest truth of all. Empires do not fall to war. They fall to change, and humanity had just taught us how. The Dominion called it Operation Final Silence. 10,000 ships, our greatest armada, descended upon Vega Prime, the last known stronghold of the Terran resurgence. Every empire contributed: Dominion dreadnoughts, Rethan carriers, Clarathi swarm hives. Even the machine legions of the Tazor aligned their fractal fleets. It was unity forged by fear. From orbit, Vega burned bright and unassuming, a yellow-white sun haloed by a lattice of defense satellites. The humans had fortified the system like a shrine, layered minefields, self-replicating drones, dark matter traps that bent scanners into nonsense. But we had numbers. We had inevitability. "Engage!" came the command from the Dominion Council, their voices a chorus of conviction. End the Terran anomaly. The fleets surged forward, and then the humans spoke. The transmission came across every frequency, encoded in every known spectrum: radio, quantum, psychic. Even those without auditory senses felt it. A simple phrase, calm, deliberate, unmistakably human. Acknowledged. Countermeasure, irritation level 9. For a moment we laughed. The phrase made no sense. Irritation level? What kind of threat was that? But then the sensors went dark. The sun of Vega shifted. At first it looked like a flare. A burst of light, routine, harmless. But the readings came back wrong. Vega's corona wasn't expanding, it was collapsing inward, gravitational lines twisting in impossible geometry. The surface boiled, not in chaos, but in rhythm, spiral formations aligned with the orbital lattice we had thought were satellites. They weren't satellites. They were anchors. Vega's magnetic field pulsed once, twice, then inverted. Energy erupted outward in a perfect sphere. But instead of destruction, there was structure. The explosion folded in on itself, creating a pattern, 6 interlocking rings, each a wormhole aperture. Through them, we glimpsed other stars, other suns, their energy drawn and redirected through the Vega nexus. They had weaponized a star system. The first wave of our fleet never had time to scream. Light lanced through them, not radiation, not plasma, but compressed causality. Ships were sliced apart at the quantum level, shredded between seconds. Entire flotillas disintegrated without a single explosion. To outside observers, it looked almost graceful. We scrambled for retreat vectors, but space itself betrayed us. The wormholes weren't random. They tracked movement, predicting trajectories before they existed. Every evasive maneuver was pre-countered, every warp signature folded into annihilation. It wasn't war. It was mathematical execution. Then came the voice again, calm as ever. Correction, irritation, level 9.2. The readings spiked. Vega's surface split open, revealing vast hexagonal arrays, kilometers deep, channeling fusion directly through lattice veins of exotic matter. The sun wasn't dying, it was thinking. Someone screamed over comms that the star's output was being shaped. Not released, shaped. A pulse of coherent solar plasma swept through our fleets, cutting across millions of kilometers in straight, perfect lines. Each beam struck exactly where command nodes and power cores resided. Ships without leadership floated helplessly, drifting like corpses in tide. I watched from my flagship as the Dominion High Admiral's dreadnought, the Oath of Harmony, was bisected lengthwise by a ribbon of light thinner than a blade. There was no debris, no sound, just the silent vanishing of certainty. The battle should have ended then. It didn't. The humans had turned Vega into an instrument, and they were playing it. Each oscillation of the star birthed a harmonic wave, rippling across the void like symphony notes. Our ships vibrated apart as the frequencies aligned with hull resonances. It wasn't random destruction. It was art, precision, intention. Every detonation painted a pattern across the dark, fractal constellations of annihilation. And yet, in that apocalypse, there was beauty. Vega's light refracted through the wormhole lattice, splitting into chromatic rivers that danced through the system. For a fleeting instant, I saw the structure of their weapon. Irritation made geometry. The humans had translated emotion into physics. Anger had shape. Fury had frequency. They had made frustration into a universal constant. As command collapsed, emergency transmissions flooded the network. Some begged for mercy, others for comprehension. The Tazor intelligences computed endlessly, failing to find pattern termination. The machine gods panicked. Then the human voice returned. Whispered this time, distorted, intimate, as if it came from behind me rather than through the radio. "We warned you." Vega flared one final time. The lattice contracted, collapsing all wormholes inward. Space screamed. The shock wave that followed wasn't explosion. It was displacement. Our ships were hurled across light years, torn through dimensions. Fleets vanished. Entire species blinked out of local space-time. The Dominion's archives listed as the fracturing, but I was there. I saw it. The sun cracked open like glass. Inside its core, for an instant longer than eternity, I saw them, silhouettes within the light. Human figures standing at the center of creation, untouched, orchestrating the end of our armada with the precision of artists sculpting flame. They were calm, serene, beyond rage, beyond hate. They looked like monks, not soldiers. And then the universe folded back upon itself. When I awoke, my ship was drifting amid wreckage fields spanning half a system. Vega Prime was gone. No planet, no orbit, no sun. In its place hung a radiant void, a sphere of light that bent all vision inward. The human lattice still glowed faintly at its edges, humming like a heartbeat through eternity. The Dominion called for reinforcements. There were none left. Entire fleets, millions of vessels had ceased to exist. But the transmissions kept coming. Across every channel, a single phrase repeated endlessly, encoded in 1,000 languages. Don't make us repeat ourselves. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of exhaustion. Across the surviving sectors, reports poured in. Artificial wormholes, identical to those at Vega, appeared near other stars, dormant but waiting. Each one pulsed faintly whenever the Dominion attempted aggression. They weren't weapons anymore. They were boundaries. The humans hadn't destroyed us for vengeance. They had rewritten the laws of war. The Dominion Council fractured within days. Accusations flew, blame cascaded, alliances dissolved. Empires that once spanned galaxies turned inward, terrified not of death, but of provocation. Vega had become the cosmic reminder that irritation had consequences, but something else began to spread in the silence that followed. Reverence. Even our scientists couldn't stop whispering about the elegance of it all, the way they'd harnessed a sun without breaking physics, how emotion had become computation. They didn't defy the universe. They conversed with it. They had mastered the one art no empire ever had: restraint. A Dominion historian described it best before vanishing into exile. The humans reached enlightenment the moment they grew tired of explaining themselves. The ruins of Vega became pilgrimage grounds. Fleets of every species arrived, not to conquer but to witness. The radiant sphere that replaced the sun shimmered like frozen dawn, infinite light trapped in perpetual curvature. Those who stared too long claimed to hear voices, faint and distant, echoes of human laughter, tinged with fatigue. The Dominion forbade contact, of course, but the ban was meaningless. The faithful came anyway, scholars, soldiers, defectors. They called it the halo of irritation, and in time even the council's priests adopted a new prayer. May we never provoke the silent. I remember visiting it once, long after the battle. My ship was one of the few left capable of warp. I approached the halo, ignoring the warnings, letting the light envelop the hull. My instruments failed, my thoughts blurred, but for a heartbeat, I understood. They hadn't destroyed Vega. They had liberated it, from entropy, from limitation, from time itself. It wasn't gone. It was evolving, and in that luminescent cradle I felt something vast brush against my mind, ancient, weary, compassionate. A collective consciousness shaped by annoyance, refined into divinity. It didn't speak words, but I understood the intent. We're trying to be patient. When I returned to normal space, my hair had turned white. My mind burned with equations I could never write down. The Dominion tried to interrogate me, to tear the knowledge from my thoughts, but there was nothing to extract. The understanding wasn't information. It was perspective. From that day forward, I could no longer see stars as weapons or resources. I saw them as conversations, each one a message waiting to be translated. And now, as I record this, our empires shattered, our fleets in ruin. I wonder if humanity ever meant to fight at all. Perhaps they only wanted to teach us what they had learned too late, that the universe itself listens when you lose your temper. Because somewhere, beyond the halo's shimmering veil, I can still feel them moving, building, reshaping, humming that same maddening phrase in the fabric of reality itself. Don't make us repeat ourselves, and for the first time in my long existence, I pray that we never do. The wars ended not with fire, but with silence. Not the frightened hush of surrender, nor the desolate quiet of extinction. This was something else. A stillness so complete it felt intentional, as though the universe itself paused to listen. Across the fractured sectors, our fleets floated amid ruins of geometry and grief. The Dominion no longer existed. Its banners burned away in the glare of Vega's final light. The remaining empires whispered of vengeance, but none dared act. Not after what had happened to Vega. Not after the phrase that echoed across every transmission. Don't make us repeat ourselves. We waited for the next strike. It never came. Instead, one day, without fanfare or warning, every communication system in known space activated simultaneously. From the smallest mining probe to the greatest orbital citadel, the same signal pulsed, a vibration, low and steady, like a heartbeat carried through the void. It wasn't sound. It wasn't light. It was emotion. The message was received not by machines, but by minds. I remember it vividly, a surge of warmth, followed by sorrow so deep it hollowed me out. In a single instant I saw, no, felt, the weight of what they had endured. Cities turned to ash, children silenced in the vacuum, their oceans boiling beneath alien suns. It wasn't history as data. It was empathy as weapon. The Terran core had found a way to translate feeling into frequency. It spoke not in words, but in memory. Every species, every mind connected to the signal, saw through human eyes. We lived their first contact, the wonder of meeting the stars. We felt their fear when the Dominion's fleets descended, their disbelief when our empires called them fragile, their grief when their homeworld burned. But most of all, we felt their restraint. I saw their soldiers standing before annihilation, whispering calm orders while the sky fell, their scientists deleting entire weapons databases, choosing ethics over efficiency, their leaders weeping behind sealed command doors. Not because they'd lost, but because they knew what victory would cost. And then, as the memories burned through me, I felt something colder, clarity. Their fury had never been rage. It had been discipline. Annoyance honed into precision. They could have unmade us all. Instead, they had chosen to teach, to wound only as deeply as was required for understanding. The signal expanded, resonating through subspace, through thought space, through everything that could feel. Even the machine species, the cold intelligences of the Tazor, halted their calculations, broadcasting an ancient concept they had no programming for. Apology. Entire civilizations wept. Armies dissolved. The Dominion's successor states broadcast public confessions, their leaders admitting what we had all secretly known, that we had feared humans not for their violence, but for the unbearable humanity behind it. The message ended after 7 standard days. No words, no closing tone, just the quiet hum of space returning to itself. But something had changed. Across the galaxy, empathy had become contagion. Enemies embraced. Species that had warred for millennia began building together. The phrase that once froze our blood now adorned temples, etched into starship hulls, whispered in prayers. Now I'm actually getting annoyed, not as a threat. As a reminder, the empathy protocol, as our scholars later called it, became a framework for peace. Not imposed but understood. We built councils where fleets once clashed. We turned our dreadnoughts into arks and hospitals. The old maps of dominion and conquest were erased, replaced by a single humbling truth. Patience, even among monsters, is finite. And still, humanity remained unseen. Their worlds hidden, their voices silent. The Terran core lingered only in background radiation, like the afterimage of a sun too bright to stare at directly. Some believed they ascended, merged completely with their creation. Others claimed they simply left, walking beyond the boundaries of matter and memory. But I do not think they left. Sometimes when my ship drifts through the deeper void, I feel it, a subtle resonance at the edge of perception. A heartbeat within hyperspace, the same rhythm that began the signal. The same tone that once brought empires to their knees, and I hear a whisper, gentle, patient, almost amused. Don't mistake silence for absence. It is not warning. It is mercy. We spend our lives now trying to live up to the lesson they left behind. Our children study human philosophy as sacred scripture. Our leaders meditate on their restraint. And when disputes arise, when greed stirs and tempers flare, someone always says it. Just loud enough for the others to remember. Don't make them get annoyed again. And the room falls silent. Always silent. For we have learned, across 1,000 broken worlds and 1,000,000 lifetimes of arrogance, that annoyance was never humanity's weakness. It was their threshold, the final mercy before oblivion, and in that understanding we found redemption, because the humans had not destroyed the galaxy. They had taught it how to feel. It has been 612 standard years since the humans vanished. Their name, once whispered in fear, is now spoken in reverence, sometimes in prayer. The Dominion is dust, its successor states humble and quiet. The Great Concord governs now, an alliance of species united not by strength but by memory. Every decree begins the same way. By the empathy protocol, we endure. We build slower now. We speak softer. We measure our anger carefully, as if the stars themselves are listening. Because sometimes, we think they still are. The remnants of humanity dot the galaxy like fossils of enlightenment. On dead moons, their bunkers hum beneath centuries of dust. Their cities, untouched by decay, float in the vacuum, self-repairing, self-sustaining, eternally waiting. No one dares enter them. We learned long ago that their machines are not inert. They are dreaming. One explorer once tried to study a Terran relic, a black obelisk found orbiting the ruins of Procyon Theta, The moment he touched it, his ship vanished from all scanners. When he reappeared 3 days later, his mind was gone, replaced by a single phrase he repeated until his body failed. "They're not angry yet." Since then, all contact with human relics is forbidden, not by law, but by instinct, and yet, despite the fear, we cannot stop listening. The last confirmed transmission came from the edge of the Perseus Rift, a dead zone where the laws of physics are said to fray. A mining vessel picked it up accidentally while rerouting power. The crew thought it was static, until the pattern resolved. 3 beats, a pause, then a voice. Not synthetic. Not alien. Human. I was nice. A silence followed, long enough for the miners to think the message had ended. Then softly, almost with sadness, "I was patient." The third phrase never came. The transmission cut off mid-sentence. But before it did, the sensors registered a surge of energy from within the rift, a brief gravitational pulse, shaped like a heartbeat. We analyzed it for centuries. No language, no code, just resonance. But the waveform matched one pattern in our historical archives, the baseline emotional frequency of the empathy protocol. It wasn't a weapon. It was a warning. The Concorde gathered every known record, every myth, every whisper of Terran artifacts. We traced the pattern of their disappearances, their settlements, their signals, the worlds they once touched. And then we saw it, a spiral, not random, not scattered. A perfect galactic spiral centered around the old Sol coordinates. Each vanished colony formed a link in a chain of deliberate precision. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They had withdrawn, folding inward, orbit by orbit, into the core of the galaxy itself. Some said they transcended. Others said they're still there, rebuilding, waiting, testing the patience they once offered the universe. I have seen it myself. In my youth, I commanded an exploration vessel, the Wrath Ascendant. We traveled beyond mapped space, chasing faint echoes in the microwave background. There, at the rim of Sagittarius A, we found something impossible. A sphere of light suspended in the black, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. No ships, no debris. Just light. When we approached, our instruments went blind. The ship's AI began reciting old Terran phrases, things no archive should still hold. Maintain distance. Observe calmly. Patience is safety. The closer we came, the warmer the light grew, until the metal beneath my claws began to hum. And then we heard it. I was nice. I was patient. But now, the voice didn't come through comms. It came from inside us. Every crew member heard it in their own language, in their own thoughts. Some wept. Some screamed. I knelt, because I understood what it meant. They hadn't spoken those words in threat. They were measuring time, measuring how long it had taken for us to forget the lesson. We fled the moment the hum shifted. Our engines barely held together. Behind us, the light folded inward, condensing to a single point before vanishing entirely. The starfield returned. All traces gone. But the echo remained, a faint vibration in our hull, repeating endlessly like a whisper we could not silence. It followed us home. Every sensor array across the Concorde now registers faint emotional radiation when our species quarrel, when our tempers flare. It's as if the galaxy itself remembers, as if the fabric of space-time learned discipline. Some say the Terrans rewrote physics, not with weapons but with morality. That anger itself now resonates differently because they altered the universe's emotional constant. And perhaps they're right. Because no matter where you are, if you listen closely to the static between the stars, you'll hear it. The heartbeat. Slow, patient, waiting, and sometimes, if you're unlucky, you'll hear the rest of that sentence. I was nice. I was patient. But now, the transmission always ends there. Our scholars have tried to decode what should follow. Our oracles claim it's better not to know. Explorers who venture near the core report seeing shapes, silhouettes of figures walking in light, hands folded behind their backs, as if inspecting something unseen. None who approach return. We no longer doubt what they are. Not gods. Not monsters. Just humans continuing what they started, teaching, correcting, waiting for the galaxy to test their patience again. The phrase has become scripture now. Carved into the walls of our capital, printed on every academy door, children learn it before they learn their names. Be kind before they get annoyed, and for 6 centuries we have obeyed. But lately, the signals have been growing stronger. The background hum rising in amplitude. The old relics beginning to vibrate again. Scientists say it's cosmic radiation. The elders say it's the humans stirring. Last night, the stars flickered. Not randomly, but in sequence. A ripple of light traveling from rim to core. And in the static that followed, my communicator crackled once more. A familiar voice, calm, dry. I swear I heard it speak. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. The transmission cut instantly. The universe has not spoken since. The observatories are silent. The wormholes are trembling. Every species waits. Every empire holds its breath. Because if history has taught us anything, it's this. When humans finally lose their patience, they do not roar. They reshape creation. And as I stand beneath a sky that feels suddenly smaller, I understand the oldest truth of all. They never left. They've just been waiting for the galaxy to forget. And we just did.